Blog Talk Radio.
Join BluPrint Radio each Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. BluPrint Radio host Gloria Thornwell interviews organization leaders on trends and best practices in business and human capital management, business and human resource leadership, and being a change champion in the new global business economy. www.blogtalkradio.com/BluPrint LLC.
Hi, and welcome to BluPrint Radio. BluPrint Radio is a division of the BluPrint Leadership Institute, and on the BluPrint Radio show, we interview organization leaders and change management professionals who are subject matter experts in human capital management, business strategy, government contracting, and those who have reinvented and led organization transformation in the new global and changing economy. I'm Gloria Thornwell, Human Resource and Management Consultant, and your BluPrint Radio show host. Welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series on executive coaching. In part 1 of our executive coaching discussion, we identified the differences between executive coaching, leadership coaching, and life coaching, and then we moved forward and introduced coaching as a leadership model. Today, we're going to move into part 2 of our executive coaching discussion and talk about how coaching can be used as a business tool, particularly for women who are business and organization leaders. Oftentimes, women find it harder to balance executive demands with life, and women also find it more challenging to integrate their personal values into the workplace. Women have the task of marketing their professional brand, and in some cases, constantly demonstrating their value add to the organization. On today's show, I'm going to interview Rythee Jones, Associate Vice President of Human Resources at Washington Adventist University. Rythee has more than 2 decades of human resources experience, several of which are at the executive level. Her background includes talent management, talent and organizational development, team building, and conflict resolution. Welcome, Rythee, to BluPrint Radio. You know, women are still learning how to get a seat at the table, have a voice in the boardroom, and become a person of influence in the workplace. So later, we're going to learn how the Human Resources Organization can help cultivate a culture of workplace coaching, specifically for women in general and for women who find themselves on the fast track. We're going to go to a short commercial break, but when we return, Rythee Jones, Associate Vice President, Human Resources at Washington Adventist University, will join us for part 2 of our executive coaching discussion. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that when you take a BluPrint Leadership Institute course, you can earn credits toward your PHR, SPHR, and GPHR recertification? The BluPrint Leadership Institute is certified by the Human Resource Certification Institute and by the International Accreditation Organization. Earn CEUs in project management, finance, executive development, and in other disciplines that will keep you current as a 21st century business leader. Register today. www.bluprint-llc.com.
Welcome back to BluPrint Radio. I'm Gloria Thornwell, your BluPrint Radio show host, and today we're discussing part 2 of our 3-part executive coaching series. Today's topic will highlight how coaching can be used as a business tool for women business leaders, and our special guest is Rythee Jones, Associate Vice President of Human Resources at Washington Adventist University. We want to welcome Rythee to BluPrint Radio. Want to be sure that you can hear us. Rythee, are you there, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Gloria. Happy to be here.
Thank you so very much. Happy to have you on the show. Rythee, I'm going to just dive right into the questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And so my first item is, in many organizations, women leaders have some unique challenges in their quest for success. Can you speak about a few of these challenges and how coaching might help women leaders to overcome the challenges?
Sure. When I think of the challenges that women leaders face, I think immediately about sort of the internal challenges, the challenges that we have that limit us as leaders, as opposed to some of the systemic challenges, such as women typically not being in the senior leadership ranks. So I'm going to focus on the sort of the ways that we limit ourselves and speak to those challenges. And there are three that come to mind. The first one is the challenge of developing a unique leadership brand. So when I think about this, I think about the fact that depending on what organization someone works in, there may not be many women role models in leadership roles, and even if they are, obviously each person is unique. So it's helpful for women to understand leadership strategies that work for others and sort of to learn from best practices and what you see others doing that's effective. But adopting those strategies blindly without making them your own, based on your own personality and philosophies of communication and connection and engagement, it's really a recipe for disaster. And I've certainly witnessed a number of unfortunate disasters where women leaders sort of tried to be like somebody else as opposed to trying to determine what type of leader do they want to be. And so the disasters are either that the person burns out quickly, or they get very stressed out over their role because they're trying to be somebody else and they're not being true to themselves. Or the disaster is that their teams don't follow them. The people on their teams view them as being fake or not authentic. And so then you have people who either leave the team or who stay on the team, and then their productivity will be lower as a result of their lack of commitment and connection to the leader. So I think that in working with a coach, and the way coaching can help in that situation of developing that unique leadership brand, is that it gives women leaders a safe space, if you will, to explore things like their core values, to explore their strengths as a leader, and also to really have a place to stop and think about what is that unique brand that I want to leave? What's my mark as a leader in this organization? How do I want to be known? Do I want to be known as the person who is high on requiring accountability from my team? Do I want to be known as the customer-focused leader? And so I'm able to create leadership approaches to my leadership that ensure that the customers are served and served effectively. Am I the good listener leader? Am I the problem solver? So, and sometimes obviously we have to kind of juggle all of those types of roles, but I think that coaching can help a leader to identify what's my unique brand. How do I want to be viewed by the people in my organization? So that's the first challenge that comes to mind. The second one that comes to mind is that just the fact that I've experienced it myself and also have talked with enough women leaders in my role in human resources and in my coaching practice to know that transitions are just simply harder on women leaders. So whether it's you're newly hired or promoted into a leadership role, or maybe you have survived a layoff in your organization and now you've inherited a new team, or maybe there's some transition in your personal life, that my experience has been that those transitions are just simply harder on women leaders. And I think they're harder because we have to sort of balance inspiring and motivating and ensuring productivity of everybody else. But also at the same time, we have this internal pressure to prove to others that we can be an effective leader and we can do it well. Coaching really gives the leader a partner, if you will, to walk alongside of them during the transition so that they can have a sounding board. In leadership roles, especially as you get higher in the organization, it's so hard to have someone internal to the organization, to have a buddy in your company who you can sort of bounce things off of or just vent to, and to try out new strategies, things that you want to do differently, approaches to leadership that you want to do differently. It's hard to find somebody within your organization. You might have someone, but it's not going to be someone who can really hold up the mirror and help you to see how you are currently, and to help you explore all of the other strategies that you might find effective. So that's where a coach can really come into play and be very effective for women leaders who are in transition. So it's a place to brainstorm new approaches and get support even when things aren't going well. That's the benefit of coaching, as opposed to just having a friend who you can just talk to. And the third challenge that I think that women leaders face is that taking care of others comes naturally, but nurturing ourselves doesn't come so much naturally. So I think that most women leaders would admit that they spend probably more time making sure that their teams have what they need to be successful, helping them to helping their teams to focus on their development. So they may spend more time doing those things than they do on their own professional development. And leaders definitely need to do this, and you've got to be proactive about it. So scheduling time with a coach to help you to take care of yourself, whether it's working through some tough leadership challenge that you have at work, or whether it's some personal issue that is impacting your ability to focus at work, or whether it's just having time to just think about, what are my plans, what are my goals for my career or for my team, for my leadership role. So scheduling them in that time with a coach as a professional development time just for you is just so important for leaders. So those are the three things that come to mind.
Well, so now that we have a real sense of how important it is for women leaders to have a coaching relationship and a coaching strategy, what are some strategies, in fact, to identify a coach?
That's a great question, because so many people these days call themselves a coach. And so I think that it's important to think about the different places where you could look for a coach. The first place, obviously, is internal, within your organization. So many HR teams have someone who either is identified as an internal coach, so maybe it's someone on the training and development team or in the organizational development area of the human resources function. Many larger organizations have that. Or it could be someone who sort of informally serves in that role. Typically, it's someone in HR. But it doesn't have to be someone in HR. So there may be someone in the organization who you have identified as someone who's a really good listener, someone who asks great questions, someone who's able to provide honest feedback and really give you that opportunity to reflect, and they reflect back to you and help you kind of think through. But you want to be sure that it is someone who's impartial and someone who's caring, someone who isn't in your direct reporting line, and probably it's someone on the same organizational level. Sometimes it could be someone above, as long as they're not in your reporting line, because I think that gets a little strange and can be a conflict of interest. But it's possible to find someone within the organization, certainly. The other place, obviously, where you can look for a good coach is externally. And there's so many choices. As I said, everyone is calling themselves an executive coach. So I think that the best way to find someone who is good for you is to ask around. Ask people who you respect, whose opinions you respect, and find out who they know who's a good coach. You really want to find someone, I think, with experience in your industry, someone who's credentialed, who's been through some coach training, So it's not just your neighbor who happens to really like to talk to people, but it's someone who's actually been through some professional coach training, and someone who you really click with, someone who you really connect with on an emotional level and in terms of interest as well. Many local coaching organizations have sort of a Find a Coach tool on their website. But I really do think that word of mouth, when you're trying to find someone who you can really connect with, is one of the best approaches.
We're going to go to a short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our interview and discussion with Associate Vice President of Human Resources at Washington Adventist University, Rythee Jones. Stay tuned.
Did you know that when you take a BluPrint Leadership Institute course, you can earn credits towards your PHR, SPHR, and GPHR recertification? The BluPrint Leadership Institute is certified by the Human Resource Certification Institute and by the International Accreditation Organization. Earn CEUs in project management, finance, executive development, and in other disciplines that will keep you current as a 21st century business leader. Register today. www.bluprint-llc.com.
Welcome back to BluPrint Radio. I'm Gloria Thornwell, your BluPrint Radio show host. We're discussing part 2 of a 3-part series, Executive Coaching, and today our featured guest is Rythee Jones, Associate Vice President of Human Resources at Washington Adventist University. Rythee, we have about 10 minutes left, and there's so much more that I'd love for us to discuss today, so I'm going to move a little bit faster. So my next question is, can you talk to us just a little bit about how organizations, specifically HR, can help women leaders be more effective through coaching?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that come to mind. One of the ways that HR can help is to make mentoring a part of orientation. So train mentors in coaching skills and assign new women leaders to a mentor, someone who has identified themselves that they want to be a mentor and they've been trained as a mentor. I think that it's important for HR also to provide opportunities to develop internal coaches so that there are a wide variety of internal options. And HR can also be proactive in offering coaching as a solution. It doesn't have to be reserved for, sort of remedial purposes. Oh, this leader is not doing well, they're failing in performance, let's give them a coach to fix them. It really should be viewed as a benefit. And that way we're not sort of perpetuating the problem that many organizations have of assuming that great technicians will be great leaders. So it's sort of planning to offer coaching as a part of that transition for either newly appointed or newly hired leaders. So I think those are some strategies HR could do.
Absolutely. And so, this question is it's pretty important, I think, and that is, how can or should women make their value more visible in their organization?
That's a great question, because I think that sometimes we don't think about our value, or we have all those internal messages, and this can apply to men as well, but I think it may be more applicable to women of messages of, who are you to think that you could be in this senior leadership role? So I think that, you could spend a lot of time trying to convince your boss or others of your value by talking with them at length about why you deserve to be given a chance at a more senior role, or why you should lead a particular project, or why you deserve a promotion. But I think one of the best ways is to simply show it through your actions, show your value through your actions. So that old saying of actions speak louder than words is certainly true in business. So I think that that women in particular need to get comfortable with raising their hand to lead a special project, being the first one to say, hey, I'll lead that special project, and do your best to knock the project out of the park, or to step up and take on the client that nobody else wants because whatever the reason is. But use your interpersonal skills to meet that client's needs. Whatever the task is, it's identifying something to make your mark. But importantly, first you have to know what your strengths are. So I think that you can't really prove your value and shouldn't waste your time trying to prove your value in something that you're simply not good at. You could get a little better with practice, but I think it's more important to spend your energies on something that comes naturally for you, the things that you have as natural strengths. So I think letting your actions speak louder than words is important, but it's also, you got to balance that, because at times you do have to speak up and speak your value. Ask for the raise, ask for the promotion, or ask for the special project to be assigned to you. So I think those are some of the strategies.
Well, those are excellent strategies and tips, and I think that, so I guess the next question is kind of a part two of question one, and the first question I asked you just a minute ago, and that is do you have any advice on how women can become a person of influence? So in other words, how do women get a seat at the head table?
Well, I think that we all have influence, whether we own it or not is the question. But I think you have to start with thinking about what legacy do I want to leave in my organization. I think that's a real good question to ask yourself. And if you have a good coach, that person would likely ask you that question. What's the legacy you want to leave? When you leave, how do you want people to complete the sentence? Gee, we're sure going to miss Rythee because she, fill in the blank. So I think it's important for leaders to spend time thinking about how do you want people to complete that sentence. So that's the first step, is to think about what's the legacy. And I think another strategy is getting good at interpersonal relationships. It doesn't matter at what level you are, being able to relate well to others is, I think, one of the key strategies of being a person of influence and being able to be noticed by others. Because I think it's becoming, unfortunately, a lost art of people being able to just interact well with others, to deal with conflict, to be able to talk with someone and have a conversation with someone whose ideas are different than yours. So getting good at those sorts of things, I think, will elevate your level of influence. You'll begin to get noticed, in addition to the work that you do being quality work. Those are going to be the things that will help you get a seat at the table.
Well, my next question talks about personal values. Do you think that, or how, rather, could coaching help or assist women leaders integrate their personal values with the professional demands and professional values and responsibilities?
Well, I think that being a successful professional, whatever the industry, starts with knowing your core values. What's important to you? Coaching can definitely help women leaders to identify what their values are. We don't often spend a lot of time thinking about what are my core values. I mean, when's the last time you asked yourself that question? So we often just go through life. We live our values. Most people live out their values without even knowing it, but I think it's important to really spend time thinking about what are my core values. Is it open communication? Is it work-life balance? Is excellence important? Is congruence with your spiritual life? Is financial wealth important? Open communicate. There are all sorts of words that you could use to define your core values, but spending time thinking about those and having a coach to help you uncover those is important. Because I think that in order to have professional success, there are three things that we need to know about ourselves: our strengths, our values, and our passions. And the intersection of those three factors is what I like to call our sweet spot. So once you've identified those three factors, it's easier to identify and to develop a mission statement and plan your professional and personal goals. And that's where that integration of your personal values and your professional values can come to play. Sometimes you'll be in an organization where the organization is at conflict with your personal values, and then you have a decision to make. But having a coach to help you walk through that as you uncover your values, your strengths, your passions, can be so beneficial to helping to clarify what's important to you and helping you to be more productive.
You know, I love that when you mentioned about the mission statement. So having your own personal mission statement, as you mentioned, what's important to you, what is my mission? Why am I here? What are my goals? What are my objectives? And when I leave, how do I want to be remembered? So I absolutely love that. Rythee, my final, or I think maybe my next and final question for you is, are there self-assessments and tools available that will help women leaders kind of on their own take time to evaluate their leadership styles?
Yeah, there are three that come to mind, two that I've used quite often with women leaders, and one that I've used personally that I enjoyed. So my favorite is called Strengths Finder 2.0. So it's I think the author was Tom Rath, and it was kind of made famous by the book Now Discover Your Strengths. And so that's going to help you identify your signature strengths and give you ideas on how you can apply them so you can do what you're best at every day. And you can use that information to help you hone your leadership. And there's another book called Strengths-Based Leadership, which is based on the same philosophy of uncovering your strengths and how do you apply those signature strengths in your leadership practice. The second self-assessment that I have really enjoyed using is called the Leadership Practices Inventory. It's by the authors Posner and Kouzes, and the assessment gives you insight into how you see yourself as a leader, how others view you, if you do the 360, and what actions you can take to improve your effectiveness. And then the final tool that I've used myself that I enjoy is helping you to develop your brand. It's called 360 Reach, and it helps you understand how others view you and how your view and their view might be different or the same.
Rythee, we're out of time. I had a couple other questions for you, but this has been such an enlightening discussion and interview. I've really, really enjoyed having you on our show. I want to thank you again for joining BluPrint Radio. I certainly enjoyed our time and confident that women business leaders and organization executives will leave our show today with additional confidence and motivation that will assist them certainly keep balance while leading the organization. So, Rythee, we want to thank you again for joining BluPrint Radio.
You're welcome.
To learn more about BluPrint, thank you so much. To learn more about BluPrint Radio, visit us at www.bluprint-llc.com. That's www.bluprint, that's BLUPRINT-LLC.com. Thank you for joining BluPrint Radio. We hope you will join us each Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, take care.
Join BluPrint Radio each Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. BluPrint Radio host Gloria Thornwell interviews organization leaders on trends and best practices in business and human capital management, business and human resource leadership, and being a change champion in the new global business economy. www.blogtalkradio.com/BluPrint LLC.